Do you like electronic music? It's all around us today, like the oxygen in the air we breathe, from the top of the pops to the oddest sounds of the underground. But from where and when did it originate? 1980s England? What about 1970s Germany? Could it be 1960s America? 1950s Canada, perhaps? Surely no earlier than 1940s Egypt. And yet, here we are. If you're interested in discovering exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes, tune into SynCult every other Tuesday from 10 to midnight for a vista of electronic sound from the field's pioneers to its current cutting edge, all placed in historical and cultural context by me, your guide, DJ Victor Alls. From musique concrète to minimal wave, space rock to speed garage, acid house to ambient, you'll find it all on SynCult.
The following program may contain material which could be offensive to some listeners or inappropriate for younger audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Good evening, and you're listening to SynCult, the show about the history of electronic music, the pioneers through the present day, as broadcast on Freeform Portland from our tiny studio in the shadow of Mount Tabor. I'm your host, DJ Victor Alls. On the menu tonight, for Hour 1 is an eclectic selection of electronic music from 1968 through 2025. Hour 2 will be a retrospective on an exclusive interview with Strategy, the acclaimed producer and founder of the Community Record label, who's been a mainstay of Portland's electronic music landscape for about 25 years now. You're actually hearing some of Strategy's music right now as bed music beneath my voice from his 2018 album Dub Mind Paradigm, which you'll continue to hear during air breaks throughout the show. But that'll all be coming later. First up for some space disco by singer-songwriter Starlet and later label owner Dee Jackson. She's most well known for her 1978 hit single Automatic Lover, which spent 9 weeks in the UK singles charts and led to Jackson appearing on the top of the pops in April of 1978. Automatic Lover was quickly followed up with Cosmic Curves later in the year, a concept album Jackson called a, quote, rock electronic space musical, end quote. The crack production team behind the single and album included Giorgio Moroder's drummer Keith Forsey, Swedish guitarist Mats Björklund of the 60s sci-fi styled space rock band The Spotniks, and British-born Munich-based disco producer Gary Unwin. Cosmic Curves was also a success, the two trading on the high point of the disco craze, the increased accessibility of electronic instruments like the Yamaha CS80, which prominently features on the record, and the success of science fiction movies like Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which enthused mass culture in all things space. Automatic Lover is a stellar, some might say interstellar pop hit, and Cosmic Curves has an excellent title track. But my favorite track from the album is probably Red Flight, with its bubbling arpeggiation and subtler, more breathless sensuality. So here's Red Flight from Cosmic Curves by Dee Jackson. Red Flight from D.D. Jackson's 1978 album Cosmic Curves. Unfortunately, Jackson never got the compensation she deserved for the record. Despite writing much of her own lyrics and being the public face of the whole arrangement, Jackson wasn't credited or as a writer or remunerated to match. As if that wasn't enough, Automatic Lover sparked a craze in South America, leading to a copycat who passed herself off as Jackson in Brazil, including giving concerts and making TV appearances, the whole 9 yards. Jackson didn't find out about this arrangement until years later. Jupiter Records, her label at the time, knew, but since the Brazilian copycat helped them sell their records, they let it go and never informed Jackson. That's the music industry for you, especially the disco industry. Fast forward 5 years later, from 1978 to 1983. The American rockist, racist, and homophobic backlash that was Disco Demolition Night never quite made it to Europe. While disco was changing and becoming more electronic everywhere, it had never really been forced back underground in the old world. The European disco industry, primarily based out of Italy, was churning out industrial quantities of disco singles for German and to a lesser extent French discotheques. One lesser-known Italian project was Charlie, a Rome-based duo consisting of Giorgio Stefani and Maurice Cavalieri. Charlie's hit is their 1983 single Spacer Woman, which you can think of as spiritually a 5-year update to the general affect and sonics of Jackson's Red Flight, which we just played. Spacer Woman strips away the lush disco production and electric guitar to emphasize the coldness and desperation of the bubbling arpeggiation felt on both songs. The synths do sound kind of cheap, but in a DIY electro-punk sort of way, not a chintzy way, though, of course, feel free to judge for yourself. Spacer Woman by Charlie from their 1983 EP of the same name. Following it up with a little Masters at Work, maybe the most influential and celebrated duo in the history of house music. Masters at Work is the main alias of Kenny Dope Gonzalez and Little Louie Vega. As the story goes, Kenny Dope started out DJing at neighborhood parties in Brooklyn in the mid-1980s. Louie Vega was also DJing around New York at the same time, but the two didn't meet until 1990, when Gonzalez put out A Touch of Salsa, a track that majorly attracted the enthusiasm of the New York City house crowd, including Vega. With Vega on melody and Gonzalez on beats, the two cut their first record as Masters at Work in 1991, and titled it Blood Vibes. The record samples a Junior Reed hook swung beneath hip-hop breaks, dubbed out studio effects, and what sounds like muted hoovers, for a sound that frankly seems more at home pulsing out of a Budokan headset and the Bristol fog than a Brooklyn nightclub. And I'm not the only one to say so. Blood Vibes was big in New York, but it was as big, if not bigger, in the UK's proto-jungle scene, a favorite of acclaimed junglist DJ producers including Fabio and Grooverider. Discogs user Terry Suki also puts it well when he reminisces about, quote, DJing in the Sub Club in Glasgow in the early 1990s on the same night that African Head Charge were playing the Barrowland. After their gig, some of the guys came down to our night, and one of them came up to me as I played Blood Vibes to ask what it was, and I'll never forget the look of surprise on his face when I told him it was a house 12-inch from New York. He thought it was some dub reggae thing from Jamaica, end quote. So here's the Jamaican, Norican, British connection of Blood Vibes by Masters at Work from 1991. That was Blood Vibes by Masters at Work from 1991. Next is something I've been meaning to cover for a while now because everyone in my media sphere has been talking about it for nearly 2 months. Telepathic Fish was the name of an ambient chill-out night that emanated from South London, specifically the neighborhood of Croydon, between 1992 and 1995, run by Kevin Folks, aka DJ Food, the late Myra Calix, and several others, plus frequent appearances from Mixmaster Morris, Cold Cut, Aphex Twin, and others. On September 5th of this year, Fundamental Frequencies dropped a compilation album entitled Telepathic Fish, Trawling the Early 90s Ambient Underground, which has been assembled over the course of a year in collaboration with the original Telepathic French, that sounds terrifying. Telepathic Fish crew. Again, this compilation has been all over my media sphere. Bleep has been plugging the pre-order since late this summer, and all my usual music websites and bloggers have been posting editorials about it. One such instance is Kevin Folks' interview with Line Noise from about 2 weeks ago, which I'll play an excerpt from to shed some light on what the Telepathic Fish crew meant by terms like chill out and ambient in the early 1990s. Usually not what we mean those signifiers to signify today.
Well, see, that's the interesting thing. You mentioned beats. And listening to the album, Trawling the Early 90s Underground, Ambient Underground, excuse me, there's actually quite a few beats on it. I mean, like the Tranquility Bass tune has got some beats on it. Yeah.
I mean, we weren't averse to it. It wasn't a sort of no beat zone, and that's the thing that I think people forget as well. There's a lot of stuff that was around at that time. We were generally playing new music from the time that we liked and enjoyed that wasn't maybe the sort of banging techno and rave of the dance floor, because we were contrasting what was happening in the main rooms back then. So when we would go out raving, there would be a lot of techno, a lot of rave and hardcore techno. And so that was the main room. We weren't playing that stuff. We were playing everything but that stuff, really. But that didn't mean to say that we didn't want to listen to things like Tranquility Bass, and things like Nightmares on Wax and all stuff like that.
Folks described music played at Telepathic Fish nights as in dialogue with the dance floor essentially, but not necessarily part of it. The early Aphex Twin cut on the compilation, released under his Caustic Window alias, certainly fits the bill. Here's Cordilatron by Caustic Window, originally from 1992, but here taken from the 2025 compilation, Telepathic Fish, Trawling the Early 90s Ambient Underground. You heard Querdelatron by Caustic Window and Aphex Twin Alias. Originally from the 1992 Joyrex J4 EP, it was featured on the 2025 compilation Telepathic Fish, trawling the early 90s ambient underground. On some level, the compilation disappoints me. Yes, it's a memento mori to an influential, unique, but until this point mostly unremembered club night, and I'm certain the lovingly designed gatefold packaging and supplementals that come with a vinyl release add something unique to the experience, but the music selection itself is oddly mainstream for a so-called ambient underground. Maybe it's just because of an unhealthy interest in early 1990s British electronica, but there isn't much that's unknown here. Then again, Folks underscores elsewhere in the Line Noise interview and in other stops in the compilation's press cycle that he chose music representative of the scene, and that they were often listening to this stuff before anybody else. It's also entirely possible that Telepathic Fish's ability to serve as tastemakers outstripped the notoriety of the club night itself. Many such cases, after all. One tastemaker that influenced Telepathic Fish was The Orb, whose 1991 album, The Orb's Adventures Beyond the Ultraworld, helped define an entire decade of adjacent to the dance floor electronic music. Their most recent release, Buddhist Hipsters, dropped earlier this month and is The Orb's best work in nearly a decade. Here's Baraka from Buddhist Hipsters.
concerning Job, he comes up with a further design. For you see, Satan never gives up. If Satan misses you one way, don't think you have it made. But Satan is coming up with a further design.
That was Baraka by The Orb from their 2025 album Buddhist Hipsters. I'm sure there are many of those in Portland. There's no way I can think of to smooth this next transition, so we're diving headlong into cybernetic music with the work of overlooked German avant-garde composer Roland Kahan. The term cybernetic music was one Kahan was very specific about. By the early 1970s, he'd conceptualized cybernetic music as a new state in the development of electroacoustic art, passed through stages from electro-instrumental music to concrete music, then to electronic music, computer music, and finally culminating in cybernetic music. Cybernetic here doesn't mean cool robots or robotic appendages. Put simply, cybernetics is a transdisciplinary field of study that emphasizes the way in which systems, be they biological, mechanical, informatic, linguistic, social, or yes, musical, create and recreate themselves through feedback loops, and that can be modeled and constructed through these means. Dutch musicologist Frans van Rossum describes Kahan's approach as such. Quote, basically, Kahan would design networks of electronic equipment and then develop a system of signals and commands that it could obey and execute. Words like melody, harmony, and rhythm do not apply to Kahan's music. Music, supposedly, should have every detail defined by the composer. Kahan insisted that his cybernetic music should regulate itself, thereby relinquishing the narrative elements and the psycho-emotional details usually associated with the ideas of authorship and work of art. This means that even he could not predict the eventual compositions, which were sound processes with an epicenter, when every sound is equally important. For Kahan, music is sound, which is sufficient in itself. End quote. Kahan composed Cybernetics 3 in 1968 while in Hamburg, and recorded at the RAI in Milan the following year, the RAI being the preeminent institution for electronic music research in Italy at the time. Cybernetics 3 takes the vocal sounds of humans and animals as its only materials. Part 1 of Cybernetics 3 is next. You heard Cybernetics 3 Part 1 by Roland Kahn, composed in 1968 and realized at the RAI in Milan in 1969. Now that we're at that point in the show, I'm very pleased to feature some cuts from Strategy. To the uninitiated, Strategy, or Paul Dickow, is a Portland, Oregon-based electronic producer, DJ, record collector, and co-founder of the Community Library label. Dickow has been releasing electronic music as Strategy for nearly 25 years, music that is varied to the point of defying easy classification. Since I'm obligated to describe it as a guy hosting a show about electronic music, his sound tends to fall somewhere between ambient, dub techno, micro house, IDM, noise, and krautrock, and is united only by his unique analog, low-fidelity approach to production. I had the honor of interviewing Strategy last week, which you'll hear in due haste, but first, a selection from his extensive back catalog. I was thinking of structuring this portion of the show in one of two ways. The first is to play a selection of Strategy's hits, deep cuts, and collaborations. The second is playing some of his music that we referenced verbally during the interview. I decided to go with the latter approach to provide more context for the interview. First is Jazzy's Dilemma from Strategy's 2004 album Drum Solo's Delight. I'm DJ Victor Alls, and this is Sin Cult, coming to you from Freeform Portland, KFFP LP Portland, KFFD LP Beaverton, and on the web at freeformportland.org. Now, back to the program. That was Jazzy's Dilemma by Strategy from his 2004 album Drum Solo's Delight. In a 2007 interview with the e-zine Textura, Strategy remarks that critics compared the album to Godspeed You Black Emperor, though, as you'll see later in our interview, it's perfectly understandable that he didn't remember this factoid 18 plus years later. Next is Red Screen from Strategy's 2007 album Future Rock. Note the crescendo that builds to a surprise cutoff, another topic that comes up during the interview. heard Red Screen by Strategy from his 2007 album, Future Rock. Again, note the crescendo that abruptly cuts off, a topic that comes up in the interview you'll be hearing later. Following up Red Screen is Baby Fever from Strategy's self-titled 2012 album, the first album released by the mysterious and highly selective Los Angeles-based boutique record label Peak Oil. We'll also touch on Strategy's relationship with Peak Oil during the interview.
Little round faces set off the program, except in some cases. Maybe the circuit's broken, maybe there's a short, or maybe there's a open. Baby fever. Baby fever. We fill our house with fuzzy proxies, but it's not quite the same. They never grow up. They never leave the nest. They never grow up. Baby fever. Baby fever.
That was Baby Fever by Strategy from his 2012 self-titled album. I'm not sure how I feel about its vocals personally, but the rest of the track is absolute gold. more or less conventionally sung vocals are also a very uncommon thing in Strategy's discography, so I wanted to get that variation in. Next is the title track from Unexplained Skyburners, released in 2022, also on Peak Oil. Of Unexplained Skyburners, Willamette Week said, quote, "Rather than maintaining a danceable groove or building to a static, climactic moments, the drums on Skyburners engage in so many rhythmic detours that the album plays as much like a jazz album as a dance album at times." End quote. We'll talk more about Unexplained Skyburners during the interview. You heard the title track from Unexplained Skyburners by Strategy from 2022. Next were the opening track from The Wet Room, composed over the better part of a decade from 2015 to 2023. The Wet Room is probably my favorite Strategy album, a concept album about the slow-motion climate apocalypse grounded in a dubwise dream logic in the bioregion of the Pacific Northwest, but also kind of bleeding past it. That opening track you're about to hear is titled Sun Comes Down.
What are we going to tell the children? Sooner or later, they're going to want to know why all this has happened. Do we tell them that the world was wonderfully clever, but so very wicked it had to be destroyed? Or do we tell them it destroyed itself by accident?
We tell them the truth. We destroy, 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 we destroy.
That was Sun Comes Down by Strategy, the introduction track to his excellent 2023 album, The Wet Room. Earlier versions of some of the tracks appear on Strategy's inferior but still good 2015 album, Seeds of Paradise. In a 2024 interview with Inverted Audio, Strategy speaks about the authorial intent behind the album, stating that, quote, "Climate change is one of several central themes that coexist in the record, but there's more to it. The concept for the album is loose and all-encompassing. It is about our planet and its multifacetedness, gigantic, minuscule, doomed, paradise, home or not. I won't say more than that, and listeners are invited to make their own meaning of it. With respect to its dystopian qualities, it has utopian ones as well, though all of it overlaps in a dreamy, ambivalent in-between zone. I'm most interested in the way that utopian and dystopian elements create friction and emit weird byproducts when rubbed together." End quote. We speak about The Wet Room at length during Sin Cult's interview with Strategy, which it's finally time for. So, Strategy, Paul, it's a pleasure to get to speak with you. Start us off. I've read a bit about your, upbringing and how that led you into music. So this might be a difficult question, but what is your earliest musical memory?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. My memory is not great. And then they kind of blend together in kind of fleeting snapshots, is probably just, yeah, my living room as a kid and kind of mapped by where the piano was and the records, the stereo. Yeah, that's, these are the anchors in the room, I guess. But I don't remember. It's so ambient. Like I just don't know how to identify a single memory.
Yeah, those blurry smears of youth and
Yeah, yeah.
your knee level, right?
Yeah, it was
And
all around.
yes, that makes sense. You mentioned in other interviews that your living room also became almost like a salon place for various musicians and experimental artists. You mentioned that you had Pauline Oliveros and they're giving a talk or holding court at one point. Could you speak to that at all?
Yeah, that was for a conference that I think happened at the university, some kind of conference or event at the university where my dad taught in the music program. And I don't remember now what the specific event or conference or concert was, but it was, yeah, it was kind of a clinic, like it was kind of an invited thing. I don't know if it was like a deep listening exercise or some kind of Q&A or talk or something, but yeah, there was a kind of holding court, Pauline Oliveros. Other folks would pass through, but it was never that formal. That's the most formal one that I can kind of remember.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's always special when I went to a smaller college and I didn't have time for the music program, unfortunately, but having professors take the class or take the course back to their house, there are a few cases where I was able to participate in that as a friend of a student and a friend of the music department and a friend of college radio, really. And that was always a rare opportunity. Anyway, I understand that you grew up initially making rock music as a drummer. What steered you towards electronic music proper, and do you think your background in so-called guitar music influenced your approach in a particular way?
So yeah, I should clarify. Actually played keyboards before I played drums. And my best friend growing up in my hometown was a drummer. And so that's kind of how we paired up and we would just jam around. And there was no guitar involved. We sort of knew people who dabbled around, but it was such a small town and we weren't doing anything with a whole lot of purpose, and nor was anybody else that we knew, so that we never like added instruments or like had songs. But we continued making music and became kind of an improvising unit. I played keyboards, and then I played drums in another band in college, kind of parallel to that, overlapping. The duo that I referred to where I played keyboards, we did briefly have a guitarist. We were kind of a trio, and then he kind of passed in and out of the band. There wasn't a lot of formality there. That was in college. So the high school kind of jamming project like sort of turned into a band when I was in college. And then rock, I use the term in the loosest sense of that.
Sure.
So live music, but equally maybe related to some kind of, yeah, jazz, free improvisation, amplified amplified loud, but not really like rock songs. The band I played drums in somewhat had more song structure, but was also pretty unusual compared to other rock and punk bands. So yeah, I think guitar music, quote unquote, like was something I experienced by doing college radio, which the college radio station in my hometown would let community members take some of the DJ slots. And so I was introduced to, yeah, kind of more rock music through that forum, having college students informing my taste and having exposure to all the new releases coming through the booth, independent label music, and just really hearing stuff that that was kind of where I started with rock music, actually, was more as a listener.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Also speaks to my experience doing college radio, incidentally. Making loose rock music in the loosest sense of the term in the 90s as a college student for a audience that might have been expecting punk rock, short, snappy, 3 to 5 minute songs, or maybe slightly longer progressive rock or classic rock. What was the reaction to the stuff that you and your bandmates were making?
Gosh, I'm trying to
Maybe that's
remember.
a leading question. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think I've just whether I accurately perceived what people thought to begin with, is such a question to me. And do I remember? Um,
Sure.
like, yeah, the first band, Two Noises, that was sort of the name we ultimately settled on. We rarely performed, and when we did, I think people just hadn't heard anything like that. Or if they had, it was in the context of like music where you might expect to hear more musicians. And so to hear it stripped back like that, I think was unique for people. Because I think we started to kind of go down a path at some point of sort of discovering like electric jazz and Miles Davis, Herbie Hancock, and 70s, kind of jazz fusion and pursuing that, but not with the full band instrumentation that you normally would use to flesh out that idea. And
Right.
so I think people would like kind of relate it to that, some of them, but then it was being done in this sort of um, unself-conscious way. And like, I think we got good feedback, but we rarely would perform publicly. I mean, we really played just a handful of shows. The most important feature of that was always like the positive feedback was most intense, I think, from other musicians and bands. And that's where we sort of started to discover that there were other people with kind of unusual tastes or kind of stumbling into their sound and process in a similar way. And finding older musicians who would become mentors and collaborators. And so um, that's really what stands out to me is like how many of these lasting friendships and relationships were formed. And that encouragement of just, other musicians recognizing like the kind of spontaneity of what we were doing and the kind of grounding in a specific sound unto ourselves. And
Right. Also, not to focus too much on the 90s ancient history and, well, this is called Synth Cult, not Rock Cult. I'm not sure why I went on the rock tangent. But circling back to one of your earlier points about kind of being a musician's musician, even back in the day, back in the 90s when you were starting out performing as a musician, not just a college student or a high schooler with a talent and a passion. People also talk about dub as one of those producers' favorite genres. And what has been your connection to dub? It's a constant touchstone in your sound, of course.
yeah, that's a good question. So I think I got into it as a record collector first. I got into it actually through industrial music,
Mm,
and I really liked Skinny Puppy and Severed Heads, who were big in the 80s and 90s, and well, still big, I guess. Um, and they were on a label called Network. And I would like, this is before the internet, or before I had access to the internet, certainly in mid late 80s, I would pull out the catalog that came with the records and CDs and tapes and look at what was being released. And I would mail order things sort of sight unseen. And they were putting out Tackhead, which
ah,
was
yes.
Gary Quayle Tackhead sound system. And um, I think I was kind of listening to it without knowing the context. And then when I was doing college radio, one of the college students who was like the music director kind of said like, oh yeah, if you like this, well, you should listen to dub stuff. That's where this comes from, and then the library in that radio station was pretty deep. So I had access. And I think the first stuff I kind of heard was like, yeah, Anu Sound System and King Tubby and these things. I couldn't really collect it, so I would tape it
Mm-hmm.
from the radio station collection using the B studio. Like I'd go in at night and just tape stuff. And then uh, when I moved to Portland, at places like Second Avenue Records, I really have finally had the chance to kind of buy things and explore my taste there. So, yeah, so Ezra Erickson from Zam Zam Sounds was actually worked there at that time. This would have been 95, 96. And I would ask him questions, and he kind of, I think, appreciated a young person coming in to find this music, and he would kind of point me at stuff. And then we stayed in touch over the years. So when I got into making music, I think it just seeped in. It wasn't like something I set out to do. Well, I would say most music I've ever done kind of happened more than I set out to do it. Like I'm like find myself doing it and then kind of back into the reasoning. So yeah, I got into it as a fan.
That makes sense. Yeah, and Zam Zam's great. I'm so glad we have them here. Speaking of labels, though, what is it like working with Peak Oil? I understand their first release was one of your albums back in 2012. They're a very exclusive, somewhat mysterious label from what I hear. And also, of course, you can't tell me who Top Down Dialectic is, but do you know who they are?
Um, I do.
Okay,
Well, top-down dialectic isn't a person, as far as I understand it, which is in a sort of third-hand abstract way.
sure.
I know a person who is related to top-down dialectic, but how I would describe that, I'm not really sure.
Sure.
So,
I'm not going to push there. I don't mean to.
yeah, no, it's okay.
It's their mystique.
Yeah, but I'm an insider if that's what you're asking. Yeah, Peak Oil are great. It's run by some of my oldest friends, and they've nurtured everything I do. So, um, yeah, can't say enough good things. That's family basically.
I really enjoyed oh, why am I blanking on the title? Something Skyburners, Undiscovered Skyburners,
Unexplained Skyburn.
Unexplained Skyburners. Just what you're doing with the sample dealing. I mean, it's a concept many producers have tried with kind of using the most well-known samples of electronic music and kind of twisting them into something entirely different, macabre even, but like I think it's one of the best. You did one of the best, be the best version of that from what I've heard. Um,
Well, I
I
appreciate that. It
digress
could have
still.
ended up as a pretty decadent exercise.
Oh, it's
Uh,
decadent, but it's like jagged and like edgy and spaced out in certain ways that are very difficult to pull off and immediately clarify themselves from a listener's perspective.
Thanks.
Um,
Yeah.
a different album of yours, though. We are circling back to Rockin' Away, Future Rock from '08, I believe.
Mhm.
It's been a question of mine for a long time. Why did you end Red Screen the way you did, just like a clean cut? I saw you saying that it was partially response to people comparing drum solo to what was it, Godspeed You Black Emperor, but was that crescendo with a cut like a playful sleight of hand, or was it something else? Could you expand
Yeah, I
on
don't
that?
remember I'm supposed to like getting compared to Godspeed. They're super different, maybe contrasted with
Contrasted.
yeah, it's like utterly different sounds, but that's so long ago I don't remember. No, it just seemed like a way that that piece of music should end. And then later on, somebody pointed out that there's a Cure song that does it,
Oh,
and from Wish. And um I was happy to notice that I'm pretty sure that I was unconsciously kind of referring to that musical moment. And I don't mind at all when inspirations like that appear in my own music. It's usually unself-conscious. Like, um, I think just there's only one way, there's only a couple ways to get out of a huge crescendo. Um, and I wanted to have a tune on the record that had like an absurd amount of crescendo. Um, and I thought that it should just, yeah, kind of zip out into a vacuum. It seemed natural, but I couldn't place why. It probably seemed natural because I'd heard that done on that Cure record so many times as a young person. So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Another question, this is something that comes up a lot, is when I see of your work, sort of the regional nature of it, like if a track called Lower Maclay on Music for Lamping, and you talk about Cascadia a lot when with library and with the images on the wet room being of the Puget Sound and like Oregon coast satellite imagery, of course. What is your relationship to the Pacific Northwest and the term Cascadia and what that represents for you as an artist and so on? Also, I guess you being somebody who moved here, in your
Yeah.
20s or 30s.
Well, yeah, I moved here when I was 19 in 1995.
Oh,
Yeah. So I hit my 30-year anniversary this past August of living in Portland. And I grew up not far away, just east of the Cascades in the inland Northwest. So um, I guess some people still call that the Pacific Northwest. So it's a pretty different part of the country, but not very far away. So I knew I would settle. I, I was pretty sure I would settle either in Seattle or Portland. Anywhere else seemed too far away. Um, I don't really remember fully why the Cascadia theme took hold. And I didn't originate that. It was something that I remember coming up in the community, and it was sort of in the water. And I would attribute it to several things. One is like the discussion of kind of bioregions and kind of what really is the country made of? Like, why is it so big? And does it make more sense if you look at it through these different regionalities and not in a kind of not necessarily even in kind of a partisan way, but just in a like um in terms of like relating to sense of place, I guess. And then I think with the after 9/11 and especially around the invasion of Iraq, which everyone knew was just completely made up reasons and really criminal, um, then I think people didn't want to refer to the United States. I certainly didn't. And locally, it became kind of the pet subject of a lot of like themed events and kind of, it became an overlay over a kind of protest discussion in a positive and fun way, I thought. Later
sure.
on, I think it's been, misused in kind of a right-wing way. It's been used in a ton of left-wing ways. It's kind of this just totally kaleidoscopic term now. And at the end of the day, I kind of think of it from the standpoint of like a bioregion, right? Like that we're in a kind of environmental and seismic kind of catchment area in the geography. And there's a cultural component to that of us being out here in the corner of the country. And there's a cultural something to it. Yeah, I'm speaking a little bit broad brush here, but
sure. No, that makes sense.
yeah.
By any chance you ever read Ernest Callenbach's Ecotopia?
I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that kind of thing was in my awareness. It's such a corny book.
It
So,
is. It's just
yeah,
agitprop. It's agitprop, recipes from the cookshops of the future, but
yeah,
it's
it's also just like kind of a book about sex too.
sure, the new
Yeah,
left.
yeah. But yeah, I think that kind of notion was potent for people on some level or was returning into the discourse. You know, people were, late capitalism, people are really like in a sort of non-apocalyptic way entertaining the idea of like a post-federal,
Yes.
like a disintegrated North America or like a post-United States reality. And what would that look like, outside of like the kind of pop sci-fi versions that we read about? Like what's a different version? And that's pretty weird to think about in today's context. But it was there in the soup, I think, at the time. It was also just like a reason to put something other than United States in the address block of the like title block on a record jacket, you
Sure.
know, just like felt awful.
That makes sense. Also, that kind of, like you said, dovetailing with the beginning of community library and yeah, sort of soft separatism that comes with anti-war, anti-imperialist politics, particularly in this country. Also, speaking of, all right, the Wet Room was my favorite album of yours, and I was like, I did have that on repeat while reading Hummingbird Salamander. I'm sure you're familiar with Vandermeer, Jeff Vandermeer.
Yeah. Yeah. I've read a few of his books.
Hummingbird Salamander is about the Pacific Northwest, and it's a version of the sort of slow motion apocalypse that would be brought by climate change and
I haven't
geopolitical
read it yet.
instability. I would recommend it's one of his darkest books, and it does say something. It came out of, I think it was 23, but it's very much a post-COVID novel and all the um, all the implications of that term.
Yeah, my brother is an author. And we were on a Zoom call recently. He was talking about Jeff Vandermeer and kind of telling me the synopsis of the book. And it really made me think of another piece of like film or literature, I can't remember, but it really made me think about a nonfiction book that came out in the late 2000s or early 2010s that was very influential. It was called The World Without Us. And I can't remember the author's name, but it was like if like humanity just like evaporated overnight, here's how quickly our kind of built environment would be like subsumed into nature, like the natural forces and these things that we consider permanent, like how quickly they would kind of erode and what elements of our reality would permanently be etched into the Earth's biosphere and what things would really be kind of like completely um, composted. It's a terrific book, and I think it probably still stands up. And I think of Jeff Vandermeer's fiction as really like probing another side of that same thing. Like I'm sure he's read it, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Mike Davis did some essays about this in the 90s, sort of the strange fixation the British have with post-apocalyptic London, The Drowned World, After London, all those books about these slow post-apocalyptic or maybe
Oh
the
yeah,
apocalypse of a whimper.
slow apocalypse. Yeah,
Yes.
my good friend David Chandler is my label partner and longtime friend and collaborator. He has like a whole collection of books by is it, I'm gonna get the name wrong suddenly. Is it John Wyndham?
John Wyndham.
Yeah, who wrote like Day
Unsure.
of the Triffids, and he's also into J.G. Ballard.
Ballard's great.
Yeah, and so he kind of schooled me on the slow apocalypse fiction, which is really 70s and yeah, like fairly British. I think John Wyndham may date back to the 40s. He's a sci-fi author. Day of the Triffids is a really interesting one. Actually, there's a sample from the film. There was a film version of it, or like a mini series version on British TV in the 1980s. There's a sample of it on my album, The Wet Room.
The one at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
The Earth was so clever that it had to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good sample. I was wondering where that was from. I'm sure I could have found it, but
Yeah. So The Day of the
thank you
Triffids
for
is
that.
like a really good book, you know. Yeah.
Well, I would never know from the movie, but I'll have to add it to my reading list.
Yeah.
Still, back to the music questions. Pleasant detour, though. You're a big gear guy, from my understanding. What is your thought process like when considering acquiring or building new kit? And is there any time there's been a piece of gear that just kind of got away? One that you couldn't afford at the time, or somebody else snapped it before you, or
Well, there's nothing tragic,
that's
but
good to hear.
in the mid 90s, I had a Fender Rhodes electric piano. Um, it was incredibly cheap. It was in horrible condition and it was horrendous to play. And I ended up trading it away for an amplifier. And it felt like a huge headache was gone.
Mhm.
But if I'd known then what I know now, I would have taken it to the best technician I could find and invested in having it renovated. And because now I can't afford one, and they're more scarce, and these instruments deserve to be kept up in their condition and enjoyed and played. And in a way, there's no regrets about trading it away because I really needed that amplifier and that was more useful in these things. But uh, it was a folly of my youth, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. Laurie Spiegel talked about this years ago and it still kind of sticks with me. A lot of these older electronic instruments are still incredibly sophisticated machines. And if you lose a microprocessor or, something's just not right with the wiring or circuitry, you can't often fix that stuff. If it's a violin or a cello or a drum kit, you can typically whittle a piece or find a way to replace a physical component through crafts work, which is impossible when it comes to old computers and synthesizers. And that stuff wasn't always meant to last. A lot of those bits of legendary Roland kit were cheap when they came out, meant to be cheaper than hiring a sessions bass player. And now that stuff is not falling apart, but I don't know, it's not going to be around for too many more decades without being a museum piece.
Yeah, although I'm really appreciative of all the energy that engineers and hobbyists and enthusiasts and kind of knowledge holders have done to sustain those electronic instruments way past their functioning lifespan. All the people that have like taken out floppy disk drives and retrofitted them with USB and stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, pretty stunning what people are doing out there. So I've really benefited from people putting in that care and being able to maintain equipment that shouldn't have had all that extra life. So, uh, we're in a good era for that, and I'm grateful.
How's your 606 treating you?
It is broken. It's been at the office of one of my technicians for a few years, and it has some really intractable issues, but I think he's also really busy. So I think I need to grab it back and see if I can revive it or pick up a new one. But it's been hard to be without it. Been one of my main instruments across all my projects. So they're really fragile, unfortunately.
How did you come about it back in the day?
It was at a music shop out on one of the main commercial drags in Spokane, Washington.
Hmm.
And I was debating about this with my parents when I was recently visiting them. I think it was Hoffman Music in Spokane. It had a big used gear showroom, and in the 90s there was a lot of synthesizer gear put out for cheap and old organs and stuff and synthesizers. And I got it for $60. It was in the case. It was in the glass case, at the front with the different pedals and stuff. And I really wanted it. And the $60 felt like a lot of money I think it was 1992 that I got it.
Nice, nice find. I imagine even in 92, that was, 606 in the window. That's something I really ought to try to snap up soon. Let's
I
see.
don't think anybody wanted it.
Really? Okay.
These things were
Were
not
they not as sought after back then? When did they start becoming big once you started having a lot of prominent
later,
house and IDM producers using these
middle and
to,
late 90s, the
okay,
internet comes back and the advancement of techno and house and other forms into broader audiences. That's when things started to go up in value and become more scarce. Yeah.
sure. And then you have someone like Kid 606 naming himself after the dang instrument.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, one more big question, really. How has the electronic music scene in Portland changed over the past several decades, and where do you see it headed? Are there any forgotten scraps of history that more recent transplants or younger heads like myself should know about?
Well, I think one thing I've been thinking about a lot is that we have this really like vibrant music scene here, and it's been like that for a number of years, but there was a time when it wasn't, and like venues were fewer, there were less events accessible for people under the drinking age of 21. Um, these businesses had a hard time staying open, and bands that played at them were not well compensated. Um, uh, there was a lot of gatekeeping, and you know, it was not even a guarantee that touring bands would hit Portland on their way. They might do San Francisco and Seattle, but skip Portland. And a lot of experimental music folks, were self-taught or doing forms of unusual or extreme music. If they weren't doing kind of song-based like grunge and rock music and stuff, they really didn't have a place to be, or if they did, these places would kind of come and go. You had to kind of know where these things were, and we didn't have social media and other things to transmit information about where events were happening. So you really had to be inquisitive and brave, to go to places and around people that you didn't know. And there was like kind of a distinct period where I remember Portland kind of like people reaching a kind of overload of boredom and just like creating spaces to do more and more different things, more inclusive things in all the senses of that. Now, I think, at the risk of sounding like kind of a Gen X like cynic or something, but like we really are so lucky. And when I find myself getting irritated or cynical or jaded or whatever, like I try to remember like, oh, like there used to be a scarcity.
That makes sense. Also have to interrupt. The timer's about to run out. It's going to
Sure.
kick us off of Zoom. So could
Okay.
we put a pin in it? Sorry
Yep.
to interrupt, but
All good.
the application has a mind of its own,
You should
unfortunately.
edit me down substantially.
I will a little bit. I'll cut out my strange asides too. Anyway, this has been DJ Victorals and Paul Dicko, aka Strategy On with Syncold. And there you have it. If you like what you hear, I should note that he's always spinning around the city. You can also find him on Bandcamp at strategy.bandcamp.com. One final strategy track for the night, titled The Rabbit Hole, from his most recent release, A Cooler World, out this March. As always, I've been your host, DJ Victorals with Syncold. Please enjoy and good night.